Hi, everyone. Welcome to our call. We're going to be talking about 2030 bulk import today. Thanks for the thumbs up, Jonathan. We're going to give it another minute while as people continue to join us.
Hi, Melissa.
Michelle. Great to have everybody here.
Hey, morning, Melissa.
Hi, Jesse. Looks like we have a pretty good crowd today talking about
Cool.
bulk import. So Jesse is on the 2030 working group and he's going to help me. I'm going to give some background information, some big picture stuff, and then Jesse might offer some specifics from a firm who is accustomed to reporting this way, and then we will answer questions. All right, so I am going to get started by sharing my screen. So the biggest, most important part of bulk import is making sure that you are using the correct spreadsheet. We updated the spreadsheet this year. So do not use last year's spreadsheet. Do not use the previous iteration of the spreadsheet. Make sure that you are using this year's spreadsheet. So we will first start with how do you find this year's spreadsheet? So if you go to the submit portfolio, the company tab, and you go down to manage projects, you can click on import and you can download the appropriate spreadsheet. I personally recommend the Excel spreadsheet because it is color coordinated and has some new features this year to help simplify the reporting process, which we'll get into in a minute. And so that should be very helpful for your reporting. So both of them are updated, but the CSV file does not have as much, doesn't have the handy dandy new features that we'll be talking about in a minute. So another way that you can find this spreadsheet is we have a help page. So I'm sure most of you have been to the DDX help. Most issues that you come across can probably be found, answers can be found in here. All I did was search bulk import there's add projects through bulk import, among many other pieces of advice. You can also download the spreadsheet from here, as well as look at our bulk import guide. So the bulk import guide is a 29-page PDF that offers the how-tos of bulk import. So the basic instructions, like I just explained, on how to get there, but further down, it actually goes through and talks about what is required and what isn't, and what the options are. So this is another way that you can make sure that all the information in your spreadsheet for bulk import is accurate, therefore eliminating the errors that you usually get when you first try to upload that spreadsheet. So what does this new spreadsheet look like? Sorry. It is color-coded up at the top to help talk about what is required. So all of these gray tops are required fields that need to be included in your upload. And we have these handy dandy little arrows that include instructions. So options like new construction, it will tell you what the different types of answers could be there. I know a big one is office location. So this one we can't fully tell you what the answers may be. You have to go into your DDX account for your firm and see what the different office locations you have available are. And so we talk about the different options for units, the different options for use types, and then we change colors. So all of the gray is the minimum required to report. And then we get into these blue, which are optional, but contingent. So if you do say that if you have a gross or net EUI, you have to include your energy modeling tool or your energy modeling party. This is one of the big changes for 2022 reporting. We have a column for gross PEUI and net PEUI. You only need to include an answer from one of these if you so choose, or you would include information way over on the other side. Sorry, too far. Around your fuel sources. So if you have fuel sources, you don't need to include those, but if you do not have fuel sources, then you need to include either a gross or net EUI. You can include both. There is a place in the DDX interface now that identifies a gross EUI and a net EUI. But if you only put one number, it will say the same number in both of those locations. Does anyone have any questions about that? If you do include fuel sources, then that information will override your gross and net EUI because it will be calculating that information on the back end of the DDX. So even if you put a number here, it'll just choose to ignore that number for the more relevant information in fuel sources. So again, the little arrows tell you the different options. So if you had an energy modeling party, these are the things you would put in those. And that should eliminate some of the errors that you get when you are uploading your spreadsheet. So once you have your spreadsheet, you will go back to the DDX and you will import. Your file. And Then it will tell you if you have errors and what the issues are. And then you would need to go and fix those within the system. So this one isn't in alignment with my current, the current account that I'm logged into. So the offices didn't quite match up. So that is the updates to the overall spreadsheet. Does anyone have questions on the spreadsheet or the updated fields or what's happening there? Nobody has any questions?
I just one quick question. There's been a document historically that kind of outlines all the changes. Is there a document this year also in addition to what you're verbally telling us today?
So we have a tab
Oh, okay.
in the help that identifies the changes that we have made.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Eva?
Yes, I'm new to this entirely, so everything you say is like brand spanking new to me.
Gotcha.
So I have a question about methodology. When people use the spreadsheet and they upload from that, are they doing that throughout the year and do it as they go, as opposed to just entering projects individually? I'm just trying to determine going forward, what is the most effective way of doing this?
That's a good question. I think, and those of you on the call who have done this before can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe that most people who use the bulk import path for reporting do it all once a year. A lot of the larger firms have their own internal database that they're updating throughout the year, and then they pull that information out of that internal database and upload it all together. There are other firms, including some large firms, that use the interface, and they do that over the course of the entire year, giving project architects access to the DDX itself to input their own information. And then a sustainability director or someone else will go through at the end of during this reporting cycle, so between January and March, and double check that information and approve it for reporting.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's helpful. The last thing that you described is what we're currently doing, but never having reported before. I just wanted to see what I could learn about future years. Thank you.
Yep. Erica, do you have something to add to that, or do you have a different question?
This is one of the questions. Hello and thank you, but maybe you can answer this one first, and then I do have others.
Sure. I just wanted to know if anyone else on the call had any kind of response for Eva. Do you bulk import at other times during the year or only at the end of the year? Jesse?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Yeah, so our firm, typically we collect all the data once a year, as Melissa described. It gives us a way, we only collect about 50 projects a year, so we don't have hundreds and hundreds of projects to review, but it gives the small group of us who are responsible for collecting the data a way just to look at it all in one place instead of using the DDX as an interface project by project. So that's currently how we do it now. And we just have tabs in our spreadsheet for all the different years. And I guess I can comment on Sierra's question about the updating previous years. So the answer is yes, if the project number is exactly the same. So if you had the DDX assign a random project number, you have to then make sure you know what that project number is and put it in the project number field. Or if you're using your firm's internal project numbers and it's the same, it will then update it to whatever the phase is and data that you've collected is.
And of course, if you don't do that and you don't have the same project number, it will duplicate the project within the DDX and assign a new project number to it.
Yeah. Which is fine too. You can just then select the new project to submit.
All right, Erica, did you want to have your question?
Yes, thank you. So the first one in the chat, as you see, just now you said you have to fix it in the system when it calls out the errors. Is that assuming that once you do the upload, then that means the system is creating the records already? So you have to individually go into the records, into the DDX to update the proper data. Is that what you're saying?
No, the spreadsheet is then rejected. So you have to go back to the spreadsheet and update the
Perfect.
information in the spreadsheet and then re-upload.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Sorry
The
for misspeaking there. You do
No,
have
no,
it in the
ahead.
system for
Mhm.
additional updates. I know that I was talking to another firm that was reporting recently, and they were he used it as kind of seeding the system. So he does a bulk import to get all the projects in there, and then does additional editing to individual projects within the DDX itself. So they consolidate that effort with all the basic information, and then do some additional work within the actual platform.
I see. So my second question was, for some of the fields, or I should say within the system, it'll automatically fill in the answer when you do it directly in the DDX. Maybe you already covered this, but if we mass upload, does that mean that the fields that are relative to the ones that it's looking at, we don't have to worry about it? It'll automatically do that once we upload the stuff.
Can you specify what
yeah.
you mean?
Yes, please hold. I have an example. We're trying to use our own ERP system to add this stuff so we can export a report. So I'm trying to recreate these, fields in our system. So what I'm asking is, for example, let's see, hold please.
Usually that's on the energy code part of it. You just select the energy code and then it starts to populate some of the defaults.
Yeah,
Right.
it's there's also one where the baseline happens, like the use type baseline says it
Right.
auto calculates, or the 2030 target, also in use type is an auto calculated field as well.
Yeah, so if you manually put in your target and baseline EUIs in the spreadsheet, it will override them when it uploads them to
Right.
the DDX. So it assumes you know what your baseline and targets are because you're putting them in the spreadsheet, and it won't auto-populate them for you.
Okay, so I need to create a workflow instead in our system to make sure that it creates a field that has that data so it gets uploaded in there. I gotcha.
Yeah, that's probably a data point you want in your internal database anyway. The baseline.
Right,
Yeah.
as long as I can get like the stuff to make it into a field that, like, the criteria for it to be categorized, I guess is what I need to look at, but that's my own problem there. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Melissa. Yeah, so I guess I misunderstood what bulk import meant. We've been using the interface since it came out to report on projects, but we're just starting to work on a few like multifamily where it would be the same building over and over. And so I thought maybe that's what we would use it for. Is it possible to use bulk import for some projects, but continue using the interface for everything else? Or how does that, or how do most people deal with when you're repeating the same type of building?
As far as I know, you can do that. You can upload projects, bulk upload, like if you have a handful of projects that you have data in a spreadsheet, you can push those up. Bulk uploading isn't submitting the data. Like after you upload it through the spreadsheet, you still have to go through the submission process where you select which projects you're going to submit for that year. So you can do a hybrid, if that makes sense with your workflow. Yeah.
Okay.
And Beth,
Yeah.
I've talked to other people
Like
who
a lot of people are doing.
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
I was just going to say other firms that I've talked to that have either like a model project or a project that is replicated, do use the bulk import path, somehow identifying each of the projects in case something changes in one of them. But it is a way to streamline something that is repetitive versus, creating an individual record. We don't have the ability to just copy project A, automatically becoming project B within the actual DDX. So that if you have multiple of those, the bulk import process would be significantly easier for you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so excited that everyone is like totally on board with the entire bulk import. We won't have any questions next month. Everyone's just going to have a seamless upload process.
Exciting times.
Jonathan?
Hey, Melissa, I have one question. Whenever
Yeah.
the changes are, is there a specific timeline tied to when the change this year to go to like the gross versus net PEUI? When those changes are made, is there, because getting that stuff like built into an internal database when those changes are made, needs to happen like before now, right? So is that when does that stuff typically happen?
Varies from year to year. I think that it happened all a bit later this year. So that work and information was not finished until the fall. So we did kind of miss the opportunity to bring everyone along internal update changes, because we would have needed to tell you. That's, I would say, one of the hiccups about the overall reporting process, in that we would almost need to identify what those changes are right now while everyone's reporting for next year to make sure all your internal databases could be updated in the same time frame. But we'll definitely think about communicating all of those updates earlier in the process moving forward. We just don't want to make commitments. The work wasn't finished until like late November. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just the last, and they're usually not like that hard to deal with, but it's we do end up going like every year and going back through after the exports comes out of the database and going through and like manually manicuring pieces to kind of get whatever, if there's a term that changed, or if there's that sort of thing. So that's one thing that I think would be helpful if we could get that information. Or wait, how is that shared? Is that just like, is there like an email blast or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've only been communicating the changes during this reporting process. So I would say that if we did that in the future and we communicated to you earlier, it would be an email blast to all 2030 DDX subscribers. So we do have the ability to email the entire group. In fact, most of you probably got an email today. But it would probably go through that same process, as well as Ina has been keeping everyone up to date on our Basecamp, the peer-to-peer Basecamp area where you can also ask questions. So those would be our two paths for updating people.
Okay,
and-
just a process point I wanted to bring up. So every year there's like a little something, it seems like, but it's largely the same.
And Justin, I would say if you don't have the bandwidth this year to make updates to your process for collecting all the data, say the gross and net EUI, you only have to submit one or the other, right? If your firm was only collecting one number, those are the numbers you have for 2022, that's fine. For next year, if you want, you can include both, but it's not required.
And very similarly, there is the opportunity, if you had it for some projects and you wanted to just pop in to the DDX later and add any other information. Like hopefully most of you will be popping in there and doing a little bit of embodied carbon, even if that isn't something you have for all projects. So.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Jesse.
Sure. When is the portfolio due? So as always, March 31st is the overall deadline. Hopefully you will not wait until March 31st to upload your spreadsheet because there are often errors and it might take a little bit of time to work through it. You can work through that with us. I hope you would go through the different resources. So that bulk import guide, and double check and see if it's a problem that you can solve yourself. And if not, you can contact us and we can try to walk you through the process. And every now and again, I cannot help you either. And we will need to talk to our developer team to figure out really where the issue is. So hopefully you don't wait until the last minute so we can actually go through that entire process or issues and we have time to go through and contact everybody. Beth?
I thank you. And let me know if this is not appropriate for this session, but we have been using the Zero tool up in Canada, and we're determining and in comparing the Zero tool's predicted energy use intensity versus projects we've actually modeled. And we're finding that the Zero tool is grossly overestimating what our associated code design standard would develop in terms of performance EUI. And so I'm just checking to see if others are finding that if we rely on that option, it's probably overestimating the performance. And if there's been discussion around that or what the best avenue for addressing that is.
Beth, is this to determine your baseline EUI or your target EUI?
The baseline.
The baseline. And are you using the energy codes? I don't know what the energy codes are up in Canada. Are they also based off the IECC?
Yeah, well, even in, say, Colorado, where it's the US equivalent, we're finding it to be off. But then even when in Canada, when we select an equivalent 90.1 version, it's quite substantial in terms of the deviation.
Yeah, I mean, the Zero tool takes the data from the 2003 CBEX to determine the baseline EUI, and then for what your target is if you don't have a predicted EUI based off your energy code. I want to say, is it the New Building Institute that helped us determine what those percentages should be? Like, are you going to do 50% better than baseline or 60% better than baseline if you're using the 2018 IECC? Or I think they helped us kind of align those ASHRAE and IECC percentages. So I don't know who the best person to reach out would be. I know our fearless leader in the 2030 working group could probably speak to it better than I can, but that's where we're getting those numbers from. So I'm not sure why they would be so far off from what you're finding.
Well, and in Canada, if you're referencing CBEX, that would be US centric and wouldn't be representative of the extreme cold climate. So there's that. Yeah,
you could try to pick a US city that's like close to you, right? Like pick Seattle or Bellingham, Washington or something if you're in Vancouver. But if you're further north than that, then yeah, the numbers would be very different.
Yeah, and maybe if there's a working group that's best appropriate to connect with on this finding, that if you could direct me to the right people, that would be fantastic.
If you want to send us an email with this question, I have gotten a question recently also about that potential disconnect with Canada. Send us an email, and there are two paths. We can bring it up with the working group and see if anyone else has had those issues. But as Jesse said, we worked with the New Buildings Institute to get all of our code or the code equivalents. So the percentages that it works out on the back end when you select one of those different code options. And we can see how much the New Buildings Institute, A, knows about Canada, or B, if they know who their equivalent is in Canada, that would be able to answer that question better.
All right, thank you. I'll send an email and follow up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, good luck to you all. Make sure you try to upload those spreadsheets in advance. And as I dropped in the chat, and I couldn't get the links to work, but you can either email the 2030 commitment at AI.org, or go into the email you got today, or the Basecamp for the Ask Us Anything office hours that we will, that start, I think, next week. And it will be me and one of our trustee members of the working group, like Jesse, sitting in a Zoom room, waiting for you all to pop in and ask us all of your questions. And hopefully you'll be hard at work at that point, so we can answer very specific questions that you're currently stumbling over. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.